I am going to go ahead and call this school board candidate interviews meeting to order. Has there been a public notice?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. So right now we are from 6 to 6:15. We are going to be doing our school board prep for interviews. So we're looking at last minute details, and then we will kick it off at 6:15 with our first candidate, Rebecca Ninke, I believe that's it. I get it right?
You got it just right.
Yeah.
And if we don't have any questions, we could start. And if we get ahead, we get ahead.
It's up to, I guess, if Rebecca's ready.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Are you ready? Oh, wait, well, let's,
Are we ready? Wait,
Do we have to do it? Do we have anything?
Hold on a second.
yeah, we got
Can I take one of
You
these?
can take some water.
You just jumped all over.
Well, I didn't think to ask of, you
No,
know,
I know you excited, you ready to go.
Peter's kind of
No, I'm just making a suggestion. If people want to act on it, we can.
Yeah, we just can't expect the other people to be.
Right.
No, I know, but if people are, we can. If not, then we get a break.
And I have to just let everyone know that I do have Joyce to give me the time. Yeah. All righty.
See the red. You won't see the red.
And we're gonna do this, yeah.
I think we're knocked down at the bell, huh?
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Do we do roll call vote, or we just go ahead and just...
Well,
We don't have any.
We don't have anything to vote on.
Yeah, you
On
can
that.
just
We're
start
starting.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, Rebecca Ninke,
Thank you.
thank you.
When I started working, my grandfather told me that if I couldn't say what I needed to say in 10 minutes, to sit down and let someone else try. So I've kept that in mind. All right. First of all, thank you for opening this up to the public. I appreciate that. So when I was in college, I worked for the political science department for my work study, and we shared Old Main space with the education department. And one of the professors that I got to know doing photocopies and such for him over the years, he handed me Jonathan Kozel's Savage Inequalities book, and it really was a game changer for me. I was kind of a hit kid from South Dakota, and I didn't know much except about my own little experience, and I became cognizant of the inequality in the world and how powerful education can be for individuals. So I dug into that learning in my first job, and I made sure that I went to experience something that was unlike where I had grown up, and I've kind of kept that in mind as I have moved around the country. And then when we got here, we decided to stay put with our kids in the school district. Since having children of my own, I have really sought to continue parenting much like the district's mission statement, promoting excellence for global opportunity. I was lucky enough to obtain grants for international travel, and so when my son was 5, and then when they were 15 and 9, my daughter 9, they had the experience, which I think was really positive, of going to Namibia and South Africa, where I had studied in graduate school. And they had a chance to see firsthand for themselves what inequality looks like, even decades after the inequality has been legally ended. And I am a proud mom to say that those experiences have really helped shape them, and it's helped them see the world through a lens, knowing that their experience, again, is not the only one, and to help them understand why individuals, why organizations make policies the way that they do. I know that not everybody's lucky enough to get travel grants like I did, but I believe in the power of education to help open up eyes, as those experiences did, and to show kids what opportunities the world might have for them. My career, as I hope you reviewed on the lengthy resume that I submitted, has taken some unusual turns, and I think though it's been surprising for me, it's been valuable to have different experiences than I would have anticipated. I've been in a variety of settings with a variety of people, and some of my benefits of my professional background is understanding family systems theory, trying to figure out where people are coming from when they're, coming to a school board or a village board or whatever with some conflict or some angst. As I note in my letter, I've spent 15 years writing curricula, which is ended up from when I fired an employee of mine, and long story. But so I've learned on-the-job training about pedagogy and different learning styles, and that I think has helped me both parenting and if I were lucky enough to get this position. Having worked in nonprofits, I have a pretty good understanding of limited budgets and perceptions of how those precious funds are used. I'm not Jared, but I have a pretty good understanding of the fiduciary issues, how legislation can affect operation, and the limits of referendums for a school district. And I think most importantly, if I don't know, I know to ask. Having served in office before, I know that the right decisions are not always the popular ones, and I am committed to always researching, to be informed, to take the long view, and to do the right thing, even if it is at that moment unpopular. When I was on the village board in Cottage Grove, we had to decide to close the police department and create a new one, which was why I lost my seat there, and I would say that I would do it all over again because it was the right thing to do. And finally, Mrs. Graham, Mrs. Hofer, Mrs. Peppers, Mr. Reinhardt's, Mrs. McLaury. I could name every single public teacher that I had all my years of education. And they were people who believed in me and who supported me and who taught me. And now the Miss Barras and the Miss Currys and the Mr. Gallops are the people who are doing the same thing in our district, and they are the ones making a difference to kids. And I believe in public education, and at the end of the day, the most important resources in our district are the kids and those who show up every day to teach them, that they are the support. And I hope that if selected to fill out this term, that would be the decision, the lens through which I would make any decision in hopes of furthering the education of our children.
Do you have any questions or anything?
Do you want me to answer the question?
The one question, yeah. we have to
Okay.
ask
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
one question.
All right, I wasn't sure how this rolled.
Yeah.
So as I said, having served in public office, I know it's not always as easy as it looks. And you know, when we campaign, we hear a lot of things, and then when you get down to it, it's a little harder. And so I know that coming in with an agenda is not always helpful or realistic. So I think what I would like to accomplish during time on the board would be to continue what has already been started, setting the vision to get the most value from our education funds through our district education, the budget that we have to work with, continuing to emphasize equity and diversity whenever possible, and working out really how that looks in our own backyards. Making sure we are listening to teachers on the ground, to staff on the ground, be it about curricula or about new school designs. And I want to continue best efforts to communicate with district residents about fiduciary issues, especially those made during these sometimes challenging growth years. Having sat on the 2 facility committees over the last 5 years or so, you know, we had some miscommunications with the public, and I think the district has made the right steps in hiring someone to manage communications. We're such a symbiotic district, and I think emphasizing how much we need each other between Monona and Cottage Grove communities. And I think the referendum results this year, how, you know, the word on the street was always Monona won't support this because the school's in Cottage Grove, and the numbers totally flipped that around. Not only was that inaccurate, but it is a sign that we are working together for the common good, and I think that's really what it's all about, to benefit the students. My husband and I literally moved to Wisconsin. We picked it on the map because of the excellent school reputation, and then we landed in a different district, and before our oldest was in school, we switched to Monona Grove after researching which one we thought was the best. I really believe in this district, and I think our kids are getting a high-quality education here. I hope to continue to support that. I want to continue to advocate for students, for staff, and for good stewardship of the funds that are placed in our hands, and to educate our kids, forging consensus whenever possible, and really having a common sense approach to education. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody on the board have any questions?
Yeah.
First of all, I apologize that we only have 15 minutes to spend with each candidate. It seems short, but we have so many candidates.
No problem.
And I apologize, we don't have long to get to know you. However, my question is, you mentioned, all the different things on your resume. Which of those do you think is the experiences that you've had would be the most relevant and most important to your being on the board? And I can ask that question because you've been a village trustee, and
Sure.
there's going to be some similarities, so you'll have some about what this is about.
You bet. I don't know that I can point out one specific, and there's a little bit from everything. People need to feel like they are heard. I think about the conflict over the book in the last couple of years. I think someone coming with an issue like that, knowing that they are heard, even if the district leadership isn't in agreement, is really vital. That was important on the board. It's certainly important in church work. I think, unfortunately, we're always bound by budgets, and that learning, I never thought that I would enjoy working with budgets and economics, but it's just, you can't do stuff if you don't have the funds, whether it's village board or school board or any other function, really. I think learning to work with people, my first job was inner city Spanish-speaking Phoenix. And when I was given a list of homebound people to visit, one of them was in the state penitentiary down in Tucson. I think those are good experiences, just knowing what life is like for other people. And that, Cottage Grove, Monona have kind of a suburban reputation, but there's homeless kids in our district, of course. There's kids dealing with all sorts of things behind closed doors, and schools, for better or for worse, are part of what supports those kids and can help them stay on the right path and make something out of their lives. And that's passion to me, that, kids, it takes one teacher, one person to really invest in a kid and make a difference in their lives. And if the school board can help support that, then it's a better school board for it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Susan Manning?
2 minutes. I really appreciate your enthusiasm and passion for the district. And just in one sentence, how do you feel that evolved?
Becoming a parent.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, equality issues, education issues, they're interwoven. That was always important to me. But, when you see firsthand, and the kids that are coming home from school with your own kids and talking to them, and what school can mean to them and what teachers can mean to them, I was the first to leave South Dakota in my family, and it was because of education. Education opens doors. Not that there's anything wrong with South Dakota.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
What, just time?
Time,
15.
Oh.
time up, okay.
No, there was still time.
There's still time? I thought you said time.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Got about
go
4
ahead.
I gotta remember my question now. Well, what is it from your village experience that you learned, either a good lesson or a bad one, that you think you might bring to the board?
Sure. Looking at the police department decision, when the vote came for that finally, after many, many months of research and outside input, when it came to the vote, it was unanimous. And we were every stripe of, political leanings for sure. And I think ultimately I was able to say to people, look, if you're looking at a broad spectrum of leanings here, and everybody is mutually accountable to this decision, there's something to pay attention there too. And I think building that and going slowly and doing the process was important. And that can get tricky with personnel issues, of course, but I think it all turned out well in the end, even if I'm not on the village board.
More questions? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to leave you with, when the referendum was coming through, I put a little public thing out, and I think that reflects how I work in the community.
I'm new to this, so bear with me if you would. I know you guys got the chance to read through the letter that I'd written, and I'm just going to go through and highlight some of the things, and then some things that may not be on there also. So my name is David Beek. I've been living in the Cottage Grove area in the school district for about 10 years now. I've been married for 17. We've had children for the last 7 years. So I have 2 young children. They're obviously very important to me, and I want to see where their school is going in the future, and that's one of the biggest reasons why this is an important thing for me moving forward, is wanting to be more involved in their upbringing, but also how the school looks, how the community looks, how those types of things, be involved as much as I can in making that the most progressive it can be within all the confines that we have within the school district itself. I'm a registered nurse, and I currently work at the VA hospital. I'm part of a management team that runs a psychiatric ward. So I'm used to working with a large number of professional people, making tough decisions, working with people, working with families, sometimes in their toughest situations you can imagine. So that's a very comfortable place for me, where decision making at a very personal level is very important, because at that level sometimes you're dealing with life and death and those types of things, and a lot of it, especially coming from a nursing background, is educating people on what they all may be seeing. I'm sure that we may all have an idea of what our veterans go through. I see things at a different level, and I certainly help families understand what that may be and how that may look moving forward. And I think that's a really important thing when I look at a community, is the veteran population, the population of people that may or may not know what goes on. And I know that some people get very, very interested in what's going on in the schooling, and some people just kind of let that be what it is. I think it's an incredibly important thing for people to be as energetic as they can at this level, because you are really wanting to make decisions for the greater good of everyone. So that's very important for me. I grew up in Jefferson, Wisconsin, but I went to high school here in Madison. I went to college here in Madison. So I'm used to the schools. I know the area. I know the type of people that live in this area and the type of schooling, and how good the schools are, and how strong our shoulders have to be moving forward to keep the schools at that level, to keep them moving forward, to keep them to being progressive, to look at things not just where we are, but where we want to go. And sometimes that takes some real long-term thinking. And I'm sure something that you want to change immediately may make something good for the immediate thing, but you have to think of things down the road and how things look as a whole. And that's something that I think Madison's done really well. And I think that we can continue doing that. But I do think that's a really important thing moving forward that we want to do. I'm the type of person that's very devoted to my family, devoted to people in my community. I'm as active as I can be. I want to be more active. That's why I'm here, trying to do all I can. I'm very interested in growth in the community. We're a community between Cottage Grove and Monona that's growing very quickly. And I think trying to keep up with that growth is a monumental task at times, and something that can, I just want to get bowled over by it, so I want to be involved in it. I want to know what's going on, and I want to be part of it as much as I can. I want to make sure that we're going in the right direction, that being active and being a voice for the people that live in the Cottage Grove community moving forward, so they know that they have someone to come to, someone to talk to about their things. I was lucky enough that when my daughter went to Taylor Prairie, to meet a lot of really great, energetic people, energetic families, really good parents that have really good intentions but may not always know where to go. I think being able to give a face and a view to some of that is very important for that community. And just some of the things that I think that point out that real popular, real important things about me. I do have a lot of experience of working with, maybe not at this level of governments, but certainly working with government. I've been working at the VA for almost 12 years, and I've been working with that type of bureaucracy for a while, and I certainly know how slow some things can move, and I certainly know how some things politically can kind of get jammed up and those types of things. And I know how hard teamwork can get past that, and working together and having a good idea and being a good team member and being progressive can help do that. You know, I'm used to working with a very centered goal and working hard to try to achieve that. So if that's working in committees, working with people one-on-one or in larger groups, or getting more people excited in our community about the things that we're doing, bring that to more of the grassroots area. That's something that I'm very interested in doing. I have very strong ethical, moral background. Used to working with budgets and those types of things, managing a medical unit. So those things I'm not a novice to those areas. And like I said, I've worked really well with the team, making very educated decisions on tough situations. I bring a lot of positive energy, a lot of really strong effort. I'm very open, I'm honest. Some of the most important things to me personally is equality, fairness, those types of ideas that bring hopefully everybody together and don't push people apart. I pride myself with having strong interpersonal skills, being able to work with people, being able to understand everybody's point of view. I think working as a team is that's a really important thing. My 5 minutes is probably getting pretty close to that point, so I'll move on and answer the question: what would I like to accomplish during the board appointment? I realize that this board appointment is a shorter period of time, so I'm not going to believe that I can make a huge difference in such a small amount of time. But I do believe that it can be a very cohesive and active part of a group that's already doing some really, really positive work. And I also am a very quick learner. I'm somebody that has a lot of energy. I love asking questions. I love the learning. Those types of things, I'm very open to those things. I want to be usually very positive. What I do right now is I do a lot of teaching, a lot of training, and a lot of leading in leadership. So that's something that I can bring this committee. Obviously, you guys are really good at those things already, but to know that somebody else can bring those types of things so that I can be asked to go do something, even in a very short period of time, and be able to lead and hopefully get some people really energetic and energized into something that may be very important moving forward. I'm very open-minded. I'm a progressive, positive thinker. I bring a lot of positive and good energy into things. Part of who I am, so you just kind of know the type of person I am. I'm a family-first kind of guy. My wife and my family are probably the most important things. Work is definitely second, but when I'm at work, I'm 100% into that. So family first, I'm very professional. I work well with others. As far as the type of person I am beyond that, I love laughing, I love reading, I love exercising. I enjoy the outdoors, I enjoy people, so just the type of person I am. I'm sure you guys have questions for me beyond that.
Anyone has any questions? Peter?
You talked about a leadership role. Could you expound on that, what your role is? And in particular, I'd like to hear how your decision-making process comes into play with your leadership.
Sure. So on a daily basis, I run. So we're a magnet hospital. So we're run. The hospital itself is run by nursing. So I'm part of the nursing leadership. I specifically run the psychiatric area. Under me, there's 2 attending physicians, a myriad of residents, but usually 2 or 3 at a time. 2 or 3 medical students, a team of social workers, a team of pharmacists, and then about 17 to 18 nurses that work with me. So I run the daily events that go on with that. So it's a large team that I help run. I do a lot of triage work. I do a lot of managerial kind of fiscally running things, make sure that goes well. Do a lot of hiring, those types of things. And as far as how that may work within this area, to me it's working as a team. And that's what we excel at there, is that no one person is the leader or the head of the thing. We work really well as a team. We ask questions amongst each other. If a doctor has questions, they have no problem going to other parts of the team. Same with me. If I have questions, I certainly question a lot of other people before I make decisions, because we should be making everything as a team, because we're working. The center of our team is always our patient, just as the center of this is going to be the student or the family or the community. So we want to get as much information from them as possible before we make any decisions. We don't ever believe that we're above anything else. So.
Thank you.
Do we have time for another one? Yeah. Could you give me an example? Again, I have a fair amount of familiarity with the VA system and the healthcare system, and I think it might be helpful to the board to hear you give us an example of how if you want to use your home environment, that's fine, but your work environment, I know you do it every minute. The process that you use for finding solutions. You have a patient and you see an issue,
right,
and you feel it needs a solution.
Yeah, I think a mistake is when someone imagines what the solution would be before they take in all the every part of the equation, right? I mean, I could easily use a patient situation or a responsibility that came at the hospital, but I could also use my children, right? I mean, I have a 4 and 7-year-old. If the 4-year-old comes to me and says, well, the 7-year-old did this and XYZ, it would be really easy just to say, well, that must be the answer. She did something wrong, right? But my wife and I work together as a team, and we take in everything. Can we get everybody's point of view on this before we start to make a decision? It could be something as, you took my piece of candy. But let's be honest, when it comes to decisions amongst anything, whatever decision may be or whatever somebody may come to you and have a complaint regarding something, we certainly want to take in the whole picture. And I think that's the point I want to make, is that I like to take in the entire picture, and I don't want to jump to any conclusions. You may come back to whatever your first thought was initially and say, well, that was probably what it was, right. But you'd make a mistake by not taking the entire thing into thought process prior to doing it. Hope that answers your question. Well,
Continuous improvement.
yeah.
Sorry.
I have one question. Do you on extra time, do you ever volunteer to coach or do?
Sure. No,
Any type of volunteer
I've certainly done some volunteering through St. Dennis. Right now, I'm active in the Team Red, White, and Blue, which is a veterans committee. And then I do a lot of volunteering through the VA, if it's working with patients that have suicide and counseling them, or if it's working one-on-one with patients to try to help with some of the things they're going through, if it's homelessness, alcoholism, those types of things. So I certainly help and volunteer my time outside of work to do those things.
But thank you, because I'm a veteran.
Okay. Well, thank you for your service.
All right. Any more questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lorene.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So we can go ahead.
Okay.
We're ready.
All right. Well, I'm going to start with who I am. Again, my name is Lorene Gage. I am a resident of Cottage Grove, and I have been since April of this year. So I moved here from Milwaukee, and that's where I was born and raised. I accepted a position at Housing Initiatives Incorporated, and it's in Madison. And I serve as the Client Services Director there. And it's a wonderful position. It's taxing at times, but definitely a rewarding position. So basically, I lead a department that provides solutions and support to clients that were homeless for 18 months or more, and now they're housed, and they need services with financial issues and mental health issues. They range from drug addiction to alcoholism. And so I lead a team of 5 case managers,
and they're hands-on with the clients, again, providing services. And I'm very proud of my team. They're hardworking, and many of the clients that they serve are viewed as second-class citizens, but they treat them as individuals, and I think that's tremendous. And again, I love my job because I'm making a difference in lives that truly need it. I work for the neighborhood resource teams in a couple of districts, and I meet with them on a regular basis and just work on keeping the clients safe. We have 200 clients, so 60 properties around Madison area. So again, I work with those districts to ensure the safety of the clients, and then I also work with the community members as well, a lot of homeowners that may have concerns, and I meet with them on a regular basis. I'm also a member of the Homeless Consortium that also meets on a monthly basis, and they talk about homelessness and resources to keep people housed and services as well. I also belong to the core committee meeting, and they discuss grants and funding for organizations such as ours so that we can provide services. I actually recently wrote a grant for our organization, actually for my service department, for $91,000, and it was funded. It was in a top tier, and that was funded through Housing Urban Development, HUD, also known as HUD. But working with this population is definitely something that's not new to me. I am a former educator. I have experience, worked in the Milwaukee Public Schools and Illinois Public School system for 15 years combined. And primarily worked with high school students in urban environments that were primarily African American and Hispanic. I focused on special education and then also severe autism. I actually received a Teacher of the Month award in February of 2017 while working with severe autistic students. I have worked in the most impoverished areas, gang-infested areas, but I wasn't bothered or afraid because I enjoyed helping children that needed support. And many of the issues that they were inflicted with were issues with poverty, homelessness, mental health issues, single-parent households, violence, physical and mental disabilities. And I think my interest in supporting them is probably what led me to the social service arena. And that's what I chose to do. I left education to go into social service so I can work with students and individuals that needed advocates hands-on. I also, I hold a bachelor's degree in communication, and I received that from the University of Wisconsin-Parkside. I have a master's in arts degree in human services, and that was from Springfield College. And then I also have a partial master's degree in special education. In 2010, I actually ran my own mortgage company. It was called Church Mortgage LLC. And I enjoyed this because I was in the urban environment, and I worked with individuals that thought they never could buy homes. They're called subprime loans. And these individuals were, had a difficult time and struggled and had a difficult past, but were able to be funded and receive their homes. And many of them still reach out to me today because of their first time home buying experience. Unfortunately, I had to close my doors to the business because the market took a downturn. I am the oldest child and the first person to graduate in my entire family, including my grandparents. I am a single mother of 3 beautiful children, Jasmine and Kennedy, who attend the Monona Grove High School, and Leah Gage, who attends Glacial Drumlin Middle School. And although they're new to the school, they just jumped right in. My 2 girls are on the Monona Grove tennis team and are thriving, and they plan to partake in more activities as well. My girls and I recently actually became vegan for health benefits, and it's been a great adventure. I love my home in Cottage Grove, and I love my diverse neighborhood. I love the scenery and the farmlands, and I think it's very therapeutic, especially coming from a hectic environment every day. So just to see the beautiful land is beautiful. So now I want to talk about what I can do for you, for the board. Of course, I would gladly accept any job in any capacity, but again, I have worked with students in the classroom, and I understand the issues that impact our schools, such as bullying, discrimination, gender rights, LGBTQ issues, mental health issues, equality, and this does have an impact on our academics and the district at large. And we have to continuously educate ourselves on the best practices to help our students and to help our educators. Again, as a former teacher that worked with disadvantaged population, I can serve as an advocate and network with other organizations to provide a support for our students and our district. My strength is in the area of communicating, of networking, and working with an array of cultures regardless of background, gender, or color. I have an extensive experience in working in urban communities and disadvantaged youth, students with mental and physical disabilities. I am aware that the district has made great strides in this area. I am aware that you have created an equity committee that's for each level of the schools. I also am aware that you are allowing students to create their own groups to express their truths and ideas. And I would like to build on those ideas and allow for organizations within our community to assist us. One organization that I work with right now is the YWCA of Madison. And I'm aware that they provide school-based learning and alternatives to discipline. And this may be a good approach for our students that have frequent truancy or have trouble in the classroom setting, and maybe provide them with a therapeutic approach. We need assistance from organizations that can allow us to dig deeper into our students' mental health issues. 1 in 5 children are diagnosed with mental health issues, and unfortunately many students of color have limited access to that. UW Health and Meriter Hospital both have programs that work with schools that can focus on academics and their future. But it's difficult to study for a test or focusing in the classroom when you don't have anyone to understand your plight. I have been very successful in leading a department and would use my approach in team building and delegating duties to different departments when deemed necessary. Another area that actually my high school children shared with me is providing resources to help new teachers and also to prevent turnover. This can be done by providing in-school programs to help teachers with classroom management, organization, and burnout, which happens when you work with children. Additionally, I think it's important to have organizations to provide additional training for our teachers, especially, again, new teachers, in how to work with students of color and students with different economic backgrounds. And allowing educators to have a safe space to talk about their biases that they may have. I would like to utilize my background in grant writing and establish long-standing partnerships with corporations and institutions that would like to help our youth. I do believe in the old proverb that it takes a village to raise a child, and I would like to utilize our village throughout Madison to help our students to raise the achievement gap. Also, grow up to attend college and be productive students to prevent the staggering numbers that lead to homelessness, which I see every day. As a single mother, I've had to rely on my network to help me through challenges. Because of my educational background, I'm able to advocate for myself. But there are many parents that don't know where to turn. Many feel overwhelmed, feel ashamed, and just don't know how to handle situations that involve their children. And I think Monona Grove School District can provide support for families. In conclusion, I would like to be the sounding board for those students, the educators, and the families that lack resources, knowledge, or ingenuity to do so. I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to interview with you, and I hope you strongly consider me for this position. Thank you.
We have 5 minutes for questions. I'm looking, I know you got one. Come on with it.
Okay. So So I had the question, how did you decide to transition from teaching to housing to your new career? You answered that question.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm going, how is she doing this? What would be your goal for your time on the board? You answered the question.
Oh, good.
How am I going to relate to the students? So could you help us a little bit? And you really did answer this, but I'd love to hear it again.
Sure.
One of the challenges, I think, in our district is finding a pathway to the families. I mean, we have the 8 hours where we can support the students, but then we kind of lose them and lose that time and start all over again in the morning. When we don't have a pathway, do you have thoughts about how to build that? Or a way that we as a board up in this governance seat could help support that?
Sure. I think just kind of mentioning what I said before is utilizing other organizations. I think we can only do so much, you know. As educators, we have to teach, and we have, you know, other responsibilities. But I think utilizing organizations that have a lot of knowledge in those areas, utilize their help in any way that we can. And it may have to take place during the school day. I mean, if it's students that are going through severe trauma, I think it's crucial to get their needs met.
The question's related, and it's,
Okay.
you know, obviously, you know, when you, in your discussion, you brought up similar thoughts in our head, and my question is, though, taking your experience now as department manager, as success
Sure.
department manager, taking your experience as a teacher, if you saw that that an organization needed to change its culture and its climate,
Yes.
how would you go about doing that?
Um,
I know it's a tough question,
It
but
is.
some of the things you touched on it with some of the things you talked about, and I'd like to hear if you have more insight. You
Sure.
can share with us.
like I'm gonna just kind of talk about my own department. My department doesn't reflect the type of people that we serve. Many of members of my department are from Janesville or other communities where they haven't seen people of color. So it's a challenge to deal with culture, and I think one, educating them, you know. I think talking to people and realizing that there's a lot of similarities more than differences. But I think it's just a gradual process that you get better and better at. But again, I think the key is education, and being able to take in more information is key.
Thank you.
You said you moved from Milwaukee
Yes,
here.
yes.
You and your young ladies, did you feel accepted here now?
Good question.
And do you still feel, and your girls, do they feel welcome here?
Yes, they do. But I guess I'm coming from an educator standpoint. And so I've educated my girls that not everyone will like you. But you still treat everybody the same. And I think their confidence kind of stands out, and people just see them for people. But have I had barriers here? Of course. That happens. Just to give you an experience that I had here, my daughter is very athletic, and she was running in Cottage Grove, and a person, I think, had their car door ajar and thought that my daughter was going to steal the vehicle, so they ran towards her vehicle. So it was like, wow, how would you think that a young lady would do that? But, you know, there's biases out there. There's things that, you know, you see television and you think that every black person is that way. And do I think that everyone feels that way? No. I know there's just some people that are just uneducated, and I guess, you know, my role is to educate people if you choose to have that.
That's the time.
Okay.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me, and of course, thank you all for your service to our community. I know it's no small undertaking. My name is Mindy Giftis. I've been a resident of Cottage Grove for the last 15 years. Both of my sons went to or currently go to the school district. My son James just graduated in June and is now at Florida State. My son Jake is a junior. at Monona Grove High School. They've had great experiences in the district. And I personally very much believe that our school districts really are the backbone of our community. And I know that our school district is facing a lot of challenges, as are all school districts right now. And I really am interested in giving back in some of my own perspectives and expertise and leadership, if you will. I know that the landscape for educators has changed dramatically over the last couple of decades, and there's much more pressure on school district to do many more things and be all things to all people, and it's very difficult to manage. And I think it's very important for our school district at this time to be looking at not only what can we be doing to face the challenges that are sitting in front of us right now, but what also can we learn from other school districts, such as the Madison Metropolitan School District, that is a few years ahead of the challenges that we have, or have had many more years with more significant, some of the same significant challenges. How do we use it as an opportunity to proactively position our district so we're not finding ourselves in the same position in a really difficult place as far as facilities, finding ourselves in a really difficult place as far as the huge gap between, students with social economic needs, real problems with diversity and inclusion. And I think that, we have all of the same problems. I think that they're, not to minimize our school district's challenges, but I do think that we're in a place where we can say, hey, we've got a lot of challenges ahead of ourselves, but what can we be doing now, especially with the new strategic plan that I assume is being worked on right now? What can we do to get ahead of these things so we can learn from some of the, and I don't want to say mistakes that Madison or others have made, because I think that they worked really hard to get where they're at, but what can we do to make sure that we're fostering a more inclusive environment so that we're able to have better performing students, so we're able to retain our teachers. I know that at MGHS last year alone, I think that 14 teachers left, something along those lines. It's very difficult. That's not limited to the education world. I know in the business world it's the same issues as well. But I would like to offer my strategic vision, if you will, on some of the things that we can be doing. I'm not an educator, I'm a lawyer. I am the managing partner of Hush Blackwell's Madison office. Hush Blackwell is an AmLaw 200 law firm. I also have extensive experience on various boards. My only real experience with the educational field is my own education, my experience with my children, which has been very great. And then also I have served in the last several years as a volunteer attorney for STEP, which is the Student Expulsion Prevention Project. I know that's a relatively controversial topic for school boards, but I think it's a really important piece of it, important piece of figuring out what behavioral education plans are, what we do with our students that are in trouble, how we react to it. And I think that another very important issue facing schools is how do we collaborate with others in the community to make sure that while we can't be all for all of our students and do everything for all of our students, we do have strong partnerships with organizations that can help us so that we can make sure all of our students succeed and feel that they are being cared for, and that the school district cares about the success of every single student that walks into the door. I don't pretend to know what the board has already done to date to address these issues. I know they're difficult, and I know that you've been reviewing it and trying to figure things out. I know each school is doing all of these things, but I do think that now is a great opportunity for this board, especially as it's time to start working on a new strategic plan process, to really look at what can we be doing boldly to really position our school district to do great things.
So, what would you like to accomplish during your board appointment, if selected?
Well, as I mentioned, I'm sure that there are a lot of conversations taking place around this right now, around what are the challenges we have and how do we face them. I would like to open that conversation very broadly, as I mentioned, to be thinking, what can we really be doing to proactively create a great school district. I think that one of the greatest areas for that, in addition for collaboration areas, is reevaluating, what is the culture of our school? And are we living it upon every level? Just like any business right now, that's so important to make sure that people that are within the walls of the schools, whether they're teachers or students or janitors, whatever they may be, are feeling like they belong there and that they are part of something that's doing something positive for our community, for our kids, for our school, because when you don't have that buy-in from everybody, which is difficult, not impossible to do, we try, it just makes everything a little bit harder. And I think that it's really important to focus on the cultures that we have in our schools so we can retain our teachers and make our kids feel safe.
Board members, do you have any questions? Peter?
What are your takeaways from the student expulsion, or what do you call it, prevention program? Tell me about what you think, what you've learned from that, and what you think some steps that might be taken.
I think the most significant lesson and difficult lesson I learned was the first case I had was in the Madison Metropolitan School District, and it was right after they had changed their behavior education plan to say we are no longer a zero tolerance school district. And my student that I was representing had an offense that he did, he admitted to, wanted to be back in school. So we read the policy and said we should have something great to work with and say this is a kid that made a mistake, he's owning it, he wants to be back, how can we do this? And every single step of the way, this administrators, the people involved in the process, were still implementing a zero tolerance plan. And they were kept sending it off down the line saying, this isn't mine, I can't help you, you need to go talk to someone else. This is not mine, you have to go talk to somebody else. And finally, frankly, what we had to do after what felt like a very unfair process with the hearing examiner, we went to the media. And the school board changed their policy and still expelled my student, but allowed him to stay in school for the year, provided he did not get in further trouble. He graduated with honors, and he was the first kid in his immediate family to go to college. So the lesson was great, that if we care about our kids and try to help them and advocate for them, they can really do great things, but it can be very difficult with some of the systemic obstacles that are in place for kids that are facing difficulties. And I've helped kids in other school districts as well. It's a little bit different, but I think we have to engage with our children to say, do they want to be here? Can we help them? It's difficult. We don't want to have our schools be an unsafe place, but in the example of Madison, the burden of proof was on the school to show that the child was a danger to himself or to the school. The kid had gotten a joint at school. So they said drugs are bad. They can lead to people getting killed. That's silly. There was no danger here. There was no harm here. So I personally feel that it's important to make sure that when we're looking at these types of things, that a zero tolerance or a very specific, you did something bad, you're done approach is very harmful to our community and our kids. Sometimes it's necessary, it has to be done, but I do think that schools get too caught up in just saying, we can't deal with this, it's another bad kid, they're out, without thinking the further consequences of what may happen.
Was your role in that, I'm sorry if anybody else is, I think they should.
I didn't see nobody's hand.
Was your role in that as primarily as an individual advocate for students, or was there more of a looking at policy, looking at processes in the
No, so in that situation, I was serving pro bono as his attorney.
Okay.
Anybody else have a question? I have a question. When you're not, because you have a lot of professional background and everything's professional, you ever have time to relax? You do anything fun outside of your work? Do you plant flowers?
I like to be very active. My family and I'm an avid runner. I love going hiking. I did for several years. I started the Girls on the Run program in Cottage Grove and coached that for 12 seasons. And that, well, it's not necessarily relaxing. It brought me great joy to be able to do
That's
that.
what I wanted you to bring that out because you never didn't mention anything of what you do on the side.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad you did ask that because I am very busy professionally, yes, and I'm very proud of that. But I also believe very strongly that, you know, we have a civic obligation to give back and to serve our communities, whether it's pro bono service, whether it's sitting on boards, whether it's coaching 3rd to 5th graders. I think that we have an obligation to do that. And, you know, our communities work because we all work together and we support each other, and I think that's very important. And that's frankly why I'm here today.
All right. Susan.
So, have you been involved with any of the school organizations, the PTOs, the high school, with Paul Frost's parent organization? Have you had time for any of those kind of things?
I did years ago, and it was more providing support to the leaders of the PTO when they'd have various questions over things, but I did not, I have not done that.
No further questions? All right. Thank you.
Great,
Mandy.
thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Elaine.
Oh, great. Hi. Thanks for inviting me here today. I was really excited to see the request for application and thought I'd throw my hat in the ring and see what happens. So my name is Elizabeth Cook. I live in Cottage Grove with my husband and my 2 children. Elliot is 4. He just entered 4K this fall, and Juliana is 2. They both go to Kid Safari Learning Center for rap when Elliot's not at 4K, and he's at 4K site there. So a little bit by way of background about me. I'm a school psychologist by training. I started in Michigan, and then about 8 years ago now, we moved to Madison, so I started my practice here. I've worked in several school districts around the area, and then eventually found my way to DPI and worked there for a number of years doing work around school mental health. Back when we got that suite of grants from the federal government post Sandy Hook, really supporting schools in systemic implementation of comprehensive school mental health services, so thinking about universal services all the way through, students who are in need of intensive services, and then how to do that wraparound to community agencies. A lot of work on our Trauma Sensitive Schools initiative across the state. That was my primary responsibility. So I started there as a school mental health consultant, eventually switched into the school psychology consultant role, which I did for a number of years, and I loved it. I loved everything about working at DPI. But as life happens, about a year ago now, a little over a year ago, year and a half ago, I got approached by an organization called the Alliance for a Healthier Generation, which is a national nonprofit that's co-founded by the Clinton Foundation and the American Heart Association, and their primary objective is to really support schools, out-of-school time sites, and also some corporate sites in really making healthy futures for kids. So they started with physical activity and nutrition and have an evidence-based approach there, and now are really interested in more of a whole child approach, inclusive of mental health, social-emotional learning, trauma-informed practices. And so I am there now as the Senior National Advisor of Social-Emotional Health. And I work completely remotely, and all of a sudden I'm in a position where I can think about giving back to my community in a way that I couldn't before when I was in the school system and then even at DPI. And so when this came up, I thought, I've been really wanting to get back to my community. It's really funny story I'll tell you really quick. So the Cottage Grove Chamber of Commerce, this event at the Pig in Cottage Grove where you go around and you see all the different things. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll be part of the Optimist Club, or maybe I'll go do this, because I was looking at that. And then this came up, and I was like, this is something I could do, and I think I would be good at it, as opposed to, I think, some of the other things that I was thinking about where I think I would be happy. I don't know how useful I would be to some of those organizations I was looking at. So that's a little bit about me by way of background, and I'm just happy to be here. And again, I heard there were 16 candidates, which I think is amazing and great. I think the more people that can invest in just kind of like public schools in general, it is a good thing, particularly for those of us with young families who are really in it for the long haul.
Okay. So what would you like to accomplish during your board appointment?
And it's not a long appointment, as I understand it, right? It goes until May, is that my understanding?
It goes till April.
Okay.
About 6 months.
Yeah. So, in the expansive amount of time that you get in an appointed position, to be honest with you, my entire, I think, purpose in this role would be to support all the things that we know are happening within the school district. And so, I think about what I know about the school district and the great things that are happening. So a ton happening, obviously around academic achievement, and there's really great things happening there. A ton of stuff happening around mental health and trauma-informed care within the school district. A lot of things happening around equity and inclusion and diversity. And yet we know, right, that it's really great, and yet there are some gaps, right? And so there's places to lean in and really help grow. And so part of, I think, what I would be looking forward to doing is really lending ears and eyes first, mouth second, which is easier for me more and more every year, and really try to collaborate as much as possible to really recognize, what is really, what are the pressure points for the district? Where are we moving right now? Like I had the opportunity, because I was here a few minutes early, to look through the new teacher training that's on the table over there, right, around kind of culturally responsive mentorship and what does it mean to set up safe and supportive environments. And I think I have the benefit that my learning curve is not quite as steep as some other folks that may not be coming in as well versed in like the jargon, right, and the acronyms and how to read the data and the report card and all those things. And so I think I can jump in right away and help really lean in on the good initiatives that are already happening here. And to be honest with you, I think that's the best you can do in 6 months. I don't know that it's reasonable to think about big sweeping changes. I do think that I have a keen eye towards staff feeling well and respected within their job systems. I know what it's like to both be burnt out and to feel satisfied as an educator. And I think understanding both lenses of those is really important, while still understanding the policy pressures and the implementation pressures that come with being a school board. I think the converse side of that as a practitioner is that you just assume that your superintendent is limitless, and then you assume that your school board is limitless also. And kind of seeing the policy end of things, when I worked at DPI and now at the national level, it gives you a better kind of grounding of there are limitations for a school board as well, in the same way there were limitations for me when I worked at a state agency. And that those limitations are real and what they are, and so what can we do within those to make the school district the best place we want to have.
Any questions?
The question is, what would you like to accomplish, not what you expect to accomplish.
What I like to accomplish. Wow. The good old-fashioned magic wand.
Actually, given that, I've got to, I
Yeah.
can follow up, but if you've given that, not what you'd like, what you expect, I think I respect
Yeah.
6 months, it's not a lot of time, but what if you had something to add, what would you like? Would you
Yeah.
add something to that?
Yeah, so here's what I would like, knowing the limited amount of information that I have around the school district and my experiences with it. I would love to see us make meaningful improvements on how our non-traditional students and our students of color are feeling within their school system. So how successful they are, both on paper, but also how successful they feel and how included they feel within the school community. So students and parents of color, students with disabilities, students who may be identifying as LGBTQ or come from families who are queer families, right? And what does that really mean to participate there would be a hope and a push. One would be around inclusivity and family engagement, right? So people like me, I come to all my meetings with my kid, and I sign it the first, the orange folder comes home, and it's the first thing that I look at, put your orange folder on the table. But I don't know what it looks like for other folks that have lots of other things juggling around. And so, really thinking about family engagement in a meaningful way so that all the voices are at the table in a way that makes sense, where people feel comfortable. And then third of that is making sure that the staff are feeling, that they're respected, that they're capable of doing their jobs, because nothing grinds on an educator more than I came here to teach the children, and now I'm in this place where I feel like I'm managing more than teaching. And so that kind of be my third prong of ensuring that teachers feel well supported, but also are capable of doing the jobs that they want to be doing, which is to teach kids how to do stuff. Did that help? More specific for you other than I can.
Yeah.
Dean?
In your experience at DPI,
Yeah.
did you have a chance to work directly with school boards in any occasions? And what was your experience, and how would you work with different wild bunches that you've had?
Yeah, I did a little bit. So in kind of two capacities. One in coaching school leaders around how to engage with their school boards and really ensure that school boards understand what's happening on the ground level, particularly as it related to our trauma-sensitive schools and schools mental health initiative. So we talk with classroom teachers or school psychologists, and they'd be like, well, but the board isn't what we're doing. It's like, well, go in front of your board and tell them, because they don't know unless you tell them. And then direct experience with boards. I had the pleasure, and I say pleasure because it's always, anytime you're in front of a group of educators, I consider school board educators too, it's just different capacity, right? You get such a unique perspective, and so I always had the pleasure of presenting at the State School Board Conference. They always wanted DPI updates and always wanted to know what we could do, and so we would try to angle that as much as possible around, like, you know, why this is a smart fiduciary move for a school district, right? Or why this may make sense from a staff morale perspective, which at the end of the day is going to help your retention rates for your staff, which is better for, you know, all kinds of things, right? And so that's like my most direct experience with school boards, is just sort of presenting to them, with them, around the topics that DPI bestowed me as having expertise on.
I see we still have a few minutes.
Sure, yeah.
Your letter mentions the phrase driving system level change for schools.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Oh man, how many minutes do I have?
5 minutes.
Okay, I will try my best. I love implementation. Like, I love implementation science. I love talking about implementation. I love good implementation. And I think when we talk about systems, it feels really big and unwieldy for folks, like the system. But when I talk about driving systems level change, what I really mean is you change the hearts and minds of the people who are in it. You change the policies and practices, right, with the help and support of the hearts and minds of the people who are in it. And then you're driving towards really big systemic goals. So when I think about that, I think of, like, okay, so Monona Grove School District, like all school districts, have a mission and vision. Attached to that is a strategic plan, right? Attached to that then are the have-tos and can-dos for all the different districts there. And so when I think of systems change, my big phrase, and I've been using this a lot lately in my other job, is this idea of, like, consistency at the core, innovation at the fringes. And that to me is like what a school district and a school board brings. Like, here's our big things. And then really thinking about kind of the 3 pillars of implementation. So it's like urgency, like why this particular thing and why now, readiness, can we do it and ought we do it, and then like contextual fit. So how is this going to live, knowing what we know about our community members, knowing what we know about our teachers, knowing what we know about our students. Like, is this thing that we're trying to do a good contextual fit? And if it's not, then how do we bridge that and mitigate that? And so that is like my elevator speech on, it's not really even an elevator speech, but that is my, as concise as I can be on driving system level change. Using data to support that, but balancing out numerical data with what I consider anecdotal data. So what are people on the ground saying about it? Because it doesn't matter if your data looks good, if the people on the ground, right, are saying the opposite of that, then any initiative is dead in the water. And so you have to balance that piece with what people are thinking, feeling, breathing in that space, and then how to bring people along in a way that they're like, oh yeah, this is like really good idea. And I'm like, I know, thank you. So.
Would you talk to us a little bit about if you came onto the board now and you had approximately 6 months, and we are in the process of implementing, finally after full evaluation, some mental health programming through Bridges, State and County.
Yeah, great.
Your thought about the board role in understanding so there are a couple pieces here, the implementation of that process. What do you see as the board's role in seeing that move forward? And what is, with your experience, what would you expect us to see moving forward? And then third, what would you like us to see?
I don't think she's going to answer that.
Oh, she's got to do it really fast. Watch.
Yeah, it's a great question and a complicated question. And so I think any leadership body, whether it's admin, principal, board, I think there is kind of 2 dangerous places to be. The one is like so overly involved that you're micromanaging and then nothing gets done, it feels stifling. The other one actually is passively okay with things, which I actually, in my experience, is a little bit worse than micromanaging. So it's like, yep, you can do this, but then we're not going to say anything about it. A little bit like a laissez-faire approach. And so to me, the best middle ground for that, for bridges in particular, but really any initiative that you're bringing in, is active involvement, right, where you understand what the setup is, where you understand what the parameters are, where you understand what the financial limitations are and how that works in terms of handing off and who picks up as far as insurance and all those things. But then meeting with the stakeholders that are responsible for implementation so that they know what exactly their walls and ceilings are in terms of what they're supposed to do. And then they understand the reporting structure back to you about what that looks like. So that you're not really digging in the weeds with it, but that you're trusting your leadership then to be in the weeds with it, but then developing a reporting structure that can report back for you. So in my experience, I've seen boards do both versions of that, right? Where you're like really in the weeds and all of a sudden people start to lose scope and capacity and don't understand where their boundaries are. And on the other hand, if you don't put in some boundaries, then it can roll in a really strange and weird direction that you don't want it to be. And now all of a sudden, as a board, you're looking to remove something or pull something back in a way that then makes people feel crabby, right? Because then they feel like you've taken something away from them. So that's my short version of that.
Right. That's the time.
Is that it?
That's it.
That's 15 minutes. Well, sincerely, thank you so much. This was, I really, really enjoyed it and really appreciated your time. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi everybody, my name is Jennifer Smith. I've been a resident of Monona for 28 years. Previously I taught here at the high school for 12 in the English department. I have pretty extensive background actually in education, everything from 8th grade up through adults. I have 2 master's degrees, one in curriculum and instruction from UW-Madison, and the other master's degree is from Edgewood College, primarily in organizational design and adult learning. I come back to the piece that gets me fired up, the thing that I'd like to do in my work, whether it's with pay or in other spaces. I like to support people in their work so that they prosper, and hopefully their prosperity helps others in their service as well. So that can look like a lot of different things, but ultimately for me it always comes back to learning. I had the honor of being on the school board with serving a full term, and learned a great deal, and again just felt honored to be able to contribute to my community, and as well feel that I was a voice and a listener for the people that actually work in our buildings as well, and that hopefully I could bring some of their words to the table when I felt it was appropriate. Generally, because I think I've had a fair amount of training and facilitation and coaching, I try very much to be present. I try to be collaborative. I try to listen more than I speak. I try to understand multiple perspectives before determining my own sense of what should be priority or what in that moment or in that context maybe should be happening at the time. So I hope that was true in my work on the board. Sometimes it's hard to see that when it's coming from yourself, but you can watch all kinds of video on YouTube, which I don't do. Thanks anyway, right? Always interesting. I'm here tonight in part, and I don't want to get really sappy and sentimental here, but Jeff was someone I really admired because he spoke his truth and he walked his values, even when it was irritating, even when it was confrontational, even when it wasn't maybe the thing to be said at that moment. But I always respected that he was genuine and that he deeply cared about the students, the teachers, the people in his community. I'm not here to be him. When I saw that he had passed, I in part reached out to some of the people that I still know in the district. I said, do you think this is appropriate for me to put my hat in the ring or not? They were positive in their feedback, and given that, then I felt comfortable moving forward. So if in any way I can kind of not be him, that's not it. But if I can in any way honor his work, well, that would That would be something. So that was a tiny piece of what I also took into my consideration to include my application. I think that's enough for now on that piece. So, yeah.
So what would you like to accomplish during the board appointment?
Sure. Well, there's quite a bit you already have up and in motion. So the land's been bought, the contractors are in gear, and you've got a new building that's going to be happening, and there's still some, I believe, right, processes and what exactly is that going to look like and how will it be peopled and staffed. I also know that Monona Grove continues to prioritize work in equity and diversity in both our communities and all of our schools, whether that happens through our new teacher project, whether that happens through summer workshopping. I know we do a lot through professional development throughout the school year. I know our admin staff has that as one of their pillars, torches, stars, something that they keep at the forefront when they're engaging with their staff. I think whether you look at the national scene, the state scene, or our local scene, that concern for engagement and equity for everyone that walks through our door needs to be part of the water we drink and the air that we breathe. And so in addition to these kind of focused trainings and hopefully gap, right, addressing, I think the more all of us continue to engage and that just becomes a part of our vocabulary, that is a good thing. So I see that as just being kind of ever present as we're making some decisions regarding policy or staffing or budget or right, whatever we're doing, that we're mindful of that. I think that's really important. There's just the nuts and bolts, the non-glamorous pieces, frankly, of board work sometimes. We've got X amount of money and it's got to go in 7 places and you have to make decisions, right, about where that's going to go. And sometimes people aren't happy with the decisions that you make because they wanted it to go over here. So, I can't say like, yay, that's the best part of board work, but I also take that responsibility very seriously because everyone in our community contributes taxes. Some people volunteer their time. A lot of families actually have their students in our schools. Pardon me. So I think being as open about why we're making the decisions we're making and communicating that as clearly as we can in terms that parents and community members can understand. I think that's also our duty and responsibility. Even if it's a non-glamorous, we re-roofed the high school. How much did that cost? Why did we have to do it this year? Why can't we put that off? And it sounds really tedious, but to some people it's really important and it matters. And I think as a board member, you just need to say, hey, this person, has this priority, they have that. I need to be equipped, right, to answer that or to direct them to the person where they can feel my board cares, they're responsive, they're informed, right, they're listening to me. And sometimes that's a big task, but I do think it's really important. So those are a few of the things that I think are essential. Yeah.
Dean?
I'm just kind of wondering. You left us. You got me out of my hospital bed to break a 3-3 tie on the book issue there.
Oh, man.
And I'm
Okay.
just wondering. Take it from there. Do you want to come back and fulfill that? That was a kind of an
Yeah.
initiative that
Yeah.
was
That was a thing.
that has kind of put a burner under the board to deal
Yeah.
with equity issues and so forth. Do you want to be back for that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, here or yes, and in other spaces as well. I think, wow, I mean, one book being debated by a community in a new policy that we weren't even sure exactly all the ways it was going to move. And I understand this board has responded with some revisions to that policy and practice already. I also understand that the high school has had some redirection of funds so that they can look at other titles and broaden maybe the menu, if you will, of what might be offered at the high school. And I'm sure that will happen and is happening in other spaces as well. So Dean, am I up for that kind of engagement and debate? Absolutely, yeah. It's funny to me, I have a little note here. In my senior year at awards night, I was given the citizenship award. I don't know, I don't really mention that very often. And it's funny to me how I thought at the time, like, yeah, I took a lot of social studies. But one of my teachers was someone you sat next to at a lecture, I believe, Mr. Landfried. He was one of my teachers. And the notion that you as a citizen should do what you can to engage with your community and your democracy, it sounds kind of corny, but I actually think that's really, really true. So again, if there's an opportunity and I feel that I can be productive, yeah, I want to be at that table. Yeah. Thank you. Hi, Peter.
If you had an opportunity to be on the board again,
Yep.
what would you do differently and what would you do the same?
Fundamentally, I don't know that I would change a lot in terms of my own reading, research, reaching out to people prior to debate or discussion or decision-making processes. If anything, I'd probably, if I had the time, right, increase that kind of information gathering whenever possible. Gosh, what would I do differently? I felt that I was in big time uptake and learning mode, and I like being in that place. I like learning from others, and I thought the WASB trainings were high quality, really helpful, and that all those people were fantastic resources for me, even outside of a training situation. What else? I wish I was more present in the buildings once in a while. That was the one thing that I just did not get to, was to be physically present in the buildings in a way that I thought was meaningful. So, and sometimes I just think that's challenging for board members, but that would be something I'd love to, yeah, do more of.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Oh, I think just that.
We're gonna skip
Oh,
over
okay.
and we're gonna go right to
Okay.
Brandon now.
That
Okay.
sounds
Ready
fine.
to go.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
we'll go ahead, Brandon.
Start with my opening statement. First and foremost, I wanted to offer the board my condolences for your loss. I know Jeff was a friend and a colleague to all of you, and I am very sorry for his passing. Education is personal to me. Beyond having a vested interest due to my daughter attending in the district, my own life has been transformed through the power of education. As an at-risk youth growing up in foster care, my own education was often inadequate and disrupted. I was told the best that I could do was to get my GED and stay out of jail. Fast forward a few years, and not only did I get my GED, but went on to graduate from college, begin a master's degree, and lead a very successful life. And it's my faith and my education that both made that possible for me. I'm here today because I want to ensure that every Monona Grove student has access to the transformative power of education.
So what would you like to accomplish during your board appointment?
Great question. For me, my professional position is uniquely focused on the impact that technology is having on society as a whole. And so during my tenure, I would like to work to ensure that our students, our staff, our district are prepared to embrace the digital advances that are coming in order to positively impact student outcomes and performance. That would be my goal.
Any questions from the board?
Could you elaborate on that just a bit?
The technology component?
Right, I mean, don't we all have, kids all have screens and they all have phones and some of that is being used here and there in schools and elaborate on it.
Yeah, great question. So technology is becoming ubiquitous, right? It is starting to integrate itself into our lives all over the place. And we see that through things like social media, iPhones and smartphones and tablets and things like that. But I don't know that I've seen a concrete plan on how to take the technology that's coming and shape it so that we can enhance the students' learning. So for instance, if you've seen some of the advances that are coming through in like virtual reality, right? And enhanced reality, where students can, instead of just reading about certain topics in history class, they can actually put on, you know, a VR headset and explore some of these places that they're reading about in history books through virtual reality. And so it's a bit more of an immersive experience for them. Those are some of the things that are coming down the road. And so it would be my goal to make sure that we're prepared for that and we have a plan in place to use that as effectively as possible.
Peter?
Your resume, you talk about your leadership positions in WPS and CUNA Mutual. Tell me about leadership in your decision-making process and how you implement change in those as a leader in those organizations.
Okay. So if I'm understanding just my decision-making process in a leadership position, first and foremost is transparency for me. Making sure that everybody understands the why behind what we're doing. There seems to be, in my experience, a lot of dissension when people don't understand why we're doing something and what's in it for them. And so if you can come out and be as transparent as possible about what we're doing and why we're doing it and try to build some collaboration into it, is a lot greater chance of having success and moving something through. Because I am in a unique position where I work, ultimately decisions do need to be made. And I take every effort to include everybody in those discussions. But at the end of the day, there are certain strategies that we have in place that require us to move forward.
Will you take a minute and talk to us about your perception of the role of a board and a board member in the district and kind of your thoughts? I mean, 6 months is a really tight window to kind of pop in and pop out, and kind of your thought about how you would see that role and conceptualize that.
Yeah, if I could conceptualize a 6-month role in a board position, I think a lot of that would be learning and leaning on you guys for your experience and trying to understand things very quickly. And 6 months is a short amount of time. But the field that I work in, technology 6 months ago isn't what it is today, right? And so it's a constant evolution of learning. It's a constant keeping up with the things that are going on. And it really is just an immersive experience that you have to stay ahead of if you're going to make good decisions. And so I would take that same approach to a position on the board for 6 months.
It's amazing. Can I ask another quick one? The other thing you talked about in your material that's a critical piece of what we do is you talked about policy. So what are your thoughts about what you see as board policy and how that evolves? And again, I love the idea of the transparency.
So can you elaborate on that
Well,
just a
so
little
for
bit?
instance, we have board policies for everything we do, and they basically regulate kind of what our role is and how we can do certain things and form committees and things like that. So if you were going to be on the board for 6 months and you were put on the policy committee, kind of what would be your thoughts about how you would approach that and what you would want to do while you're a member of that committee?
Yeah, if I had responsibility for making policy, I would have to say that I would take a measured approach, understanding that it is a limited appointment and not an elected appointment by the citizens. I would be hesitant to make drastic policy changes that would kind of outlive my legacy on the board. So it would be an incremental approach in making policy and reviewing policy.
Can I ask another one?
Yeah.
Go ahead, who cares? So again, having a great background in WPS and knowing the people who kind of formed it when it became a company, now that it's evolving, just generally in a few sentences, how do you see the integration, and I'm going to run parallels with that with education, technology and the role of WPS in healthcare? And other than Judy Faulkner and the Epic Center of the World, and then how would you take those experiences that you're doing in that environment that you've learned about and bring those to the educational world, to us?
Really good question.
I'm not sure yet.
Yeah.
I don't know either. See, I don't know the answer. That's why I asked you.
No, for those of you who don't know, WPS is we have a small public health insurance and a Medicare supplement plan that we sell commercially. The bulk of our business is as a government contractor. We bid, we do a lot of requests for proposal responses to those in the government space, specifically Centers for Medicaid and Medicare and the Department of Defense. 10 years ago, when we got a healthcare claim, it was typically mailed to us or faxed to us on paper, right? And the amount of time that it took to go through and read that claim by a person and to type that claim into a system and to have that system read the rules and process that claim appropriately was exorbitant compared to what it is today. So flash forward to today, we have multiple different options. We've got the integration of technology into everything that we do. So if they fax a claim, that's on a digital server, and it sends a digital image to an electronic file that's immediately ingested into our claims processing system. Providers, beneficiaries can submit claims through mobile applications, through websites and different web portals. And all of that stuff is integrated behind the scenes to integrate with our system and adjudicate that claim more quickly. So we've gone from processing everything on paper, almost 100% of it, to about 90% of the work that we do being digital today. And so I think that understanding how quickly that happens, but also understanding the effort that is required in transformation. And so that's kind of a buzzword that I hear quite a bit is digital transformation and technology transformation. And it's a lot harder than it sounds. And it is a lot, in my opinion, about having the right people in place, about having the right vision in place, and really having like a roadmap and a strategy. Like, where do we want to go, and how can we get there kind of incrementally, right?
Well, besides dealing with administration and teachers, you deal with kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you have kids.
Mm-hmm.
And as adults, our kids really don't listen to us, but they listen to someone outside that's positive. What do you have that you've done part in the community with kids, out of work, doing something, volunteering, any other thing? I didn't see nothing in here, so I just want to know if you do anything, any volunteering, anything, or have.
Yeah, great question. My wife and I moved here about 2 years ago from Illinois. While I was in Illinois, I spent several years volunteering for the Special Olympics, which is geared primarily towards students with disabilities so that they can participate in sports and learn sportsmanship and athletics and all those things. After moving to Cottage Grove, I started attending Door Creek Church, and from there I volunteered for the summer at what's called Camp Tuesday. And so Camp Tuesday goes into some of the lower income communities in Sun Prairie and works with those kids, helps them to get their homework done, and is kind of like a bridge between when school gets out and when their parents come home. A lot of them have single-parent households, and so we would do different activities with them. The police would come out from Sun Prairie and kind of have that positive impact on them, you know, play basketball with them and things like that, and just kind of be a positive role model. I'm sorry that I left that off, but great question.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. And thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah.
You should still have the Part B.
Yeah? Okay, we'll work on it.
You were good at that.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, yes, my daughter wasn't found, but we got her.
So Chris is not set to start it until
8:15, we always tell 8:15.
And now finally, because the library closed, they didn't like,
Oh,
what are you hanging at the wall until 8 o'clock for? I can't, I'm sure.